This episode was sponsored by LastPass. So smartphones, we all have them, we all know how to use them, but from time to time, we can all make some mistakes on them. So in today's video, we're gonna be going over 8 mistakes that you should avoid making on your smartphone, starting off with mistake number 1 in closing your apps. A lot of people close the apps on their phone thinking that it'll help speed things up by freeing up system resources and that it'll save battery by preventing those apps from running in the background. But the irony is, generally speaking, the opposite is true. Closing an app means that your phone's processor will have to reload that app the next time that you use it, which not only slows things down because loading apps takes time, but it also drains your battery because loading apps uses energy. So in most cases, you'd be much better off just leaving your apps alone, letting them run in the background, and trust that your smartphone's OS is smart enough to close them automatically when it's most efficient to do so. Mistake number 2, charging it wrong. If you're the kind of person who gets a new smartphone every year or two, then I wouldn't really worry about how you charge your smartphone. But if you're somebody who's looking to maximize your battery life and how well it holds a charge in the long term, then there are a few charging mistakes that you should avoid. The first mistake is leaving your phone on charge all throughout the night. Sure, while smartphones are smart enough to stop charging once they reach 100%, because just being on standby still uses up some battery, your phone will eventually drop under a 100% charge, at which point the phone will start charging up again back to 100%, and this cycle can repeat itself several times throughout the night, generating excess heat, which ultimately in the long term can reduce your battery capacity. The other charging mistake that people make is letting your battery drain too low or charging it too high. In general, it's advised not to let your phone drop below 20% and not to charge it over 80%, as when you get to either end of these extremes, it puts more pressure on your battery and ultimately degrades it at a faster rate. Mistake number 3, using the same passwords. Maybe the biggest single mistake that people make when it comes to securing the apps on their phones is using the same password across multiple accounts. The reason why this is a mistake is if even just one of those accounts gets hacked, all of your other accounts that use that same username and password can get easily hacked as well. Now obviously, using a different password for like each and every one of your accounts is pretty much impossible to memorize, which is where using a password manager comes in. This episode is sponsored by LastPass, which is a password manager that can not only remember all of your different passwords for you, but it does so securely with high-level encryption and multi-factor authentication, which was actually recently updated to support both Microsoft and YubiKey. With LastPass, you won't have to worry about looking for your passwords or getting locked out of your accounts, as you can keep track of all of your passwords safely in one place and conveniently have those usernames and passwords filled in for you automatically in supported apps. It just makes the whole process of logging into your accounts more secure and easier than ever before, so click on that first link down below to learn more about LastPass and put your passwords on autopilot. Alright, moving on. Number 4, using social media apps to save photos. So while there's nothing technically wrong with taking photos and videos using social media apps, the problem arises when you start using these apps to capture more and more of your life's important moments. Because unlike the photos and videos that the camera app on your phone takes, social media apps heavily compress things in order to make them more efficient to send, which is great for sharing, but absolutely horrible for quality. The same photo taken on a social app just pales in comparison to what your phone's camera app can produce. So while I'm not saying don't use social media apps to share some of your life's moments, I am saying that it's important to remember that you can always share a photo or a video that you took using your phone's camera app later on, but you can never go back in time to get all that lost detail back from a photo that you took with a social app. Mistake number 5, handing an unlocked phone to a stranger. Now you may be thinking like, okay Dave, who actually hands an unlocked phone to a stranger? And the answer is more people than you think. When people are out in public and they're hanging out with like friends or family, they often look for the first friendly face that they see and they ask them if they can take a photo of their group. And more often than not, when they hand their phone over, it's unlocked. So don't do that. Sure, you can't control whether or not a stranger runs away with your phone, okay? But if you lock your phone first and then launch the camera app from the lock screen, at least if they do run away with your phone, they won't be able to get into any of your stuff. Mistake number 6, not cleaning your phone. So studies have found that the screens on our smartphones can have up to 10 times more germs on them than a toilet seat. That's pretty gross, right? But before you go grabbing a bottle of glass cleaner, be aware that cleaning products containing ammonia ammonia or alcohol can actually damage your screen's oleophobic coating, the stuff that keeps your phone fingerprint resistant. So it's advised to regularly clean your phone with a moist microfiber cloth, which should at least wipe away most of the germs without scratching or damaging your screen. Mistake number 7. Not downloading offline maps. One of the best features on a smartphone is the built-in navigation system, but what a lot of people don't realize is if you end up making a wrong turn and find yourself in a cellular dead spot, those turn-by-turn directions that you rely so heavily on will cease to work. But if you were to download offline maps, your navigation will still work without a problem as long as you can get a GPS signal, which really only needs a clear view of the sky. So install a mapping app that supports offline maps and download maps for any area that you plan on traveling to. And finally, mistake number 8, leaving your phone on the table. So there are actually 2 reasons why you don't want to leave your phone in front of you on the table. The first is if you have a drink or your friend has a drink, that drink could spill and cause liquid damage to your phone if it isn't water resistant. But the second reason why you shouldn't leave your phone on the table is actually a little bit more interesting. In a recent study, experimenters found that people who left their phones on the table during a cognitive test performed significantly worse than people who had their phones in their pockets. And they weren't using their phones while it was on the table, and it didn't matter if it was on silent or if it was face down. If people had their smartphones on the table, it technically made them less smart. Now that sounds kind of weird, right? But the reasoning behind it is we're so wired to check our phones that even if we resist checking it, it still acts as a distraction. It's like trying to go on a diet and having a warm chocolate chip cookie sitting on the table. Like sure, you might be able to resist it, but it isn't going to help your odds in the long term. Alright, so those are 8 mistakes that you should avoid making on your smartphone. If there's a mistake that you think should have made the list but didn't, let me know about it down below in the comments. Anyways, that is it for me in this video. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the very next episode.